All right, gentlemen, Common Sense Ohio remote edition. So we've got Brett in the studio, Steve Palmer here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, Raceway, whatever you call it, and Norm down in Georgia. Norm, are you logged in from Georgia?
I sure hope I am. I'm having a few technical difficulties.
Well, it looks like it's working for now anyway. So July 26, 2024, commonsensehioShow.com. The show must go on. The show is going on, even though two of the three are not there. The wonders of modern technology taken advantage by Channel 511. Of course, the studio is making all this happen. And while we're talking about that, if you want your own podcast, no big deal. All you got to do is go to channel511.com. Easy sign up. One of our engineers will meet you at the studio. You can be just like the big boys, just like Brett, Norm, and me, and have your own podcast. So on other matters, lawyer talk, yours truly's first foray into the podcast world is it's never been dead, but it's just sort of been dormant. So it is now awake. New episodes dropping weekly. So check that out, lawyertalkpodcast.com. Without further ado, we'll get right at it. Lots of news this week, Norm, lots of stuff going on, but there is a World War II this is a significant day in World War II that I think we should talk about because, it only changed the course of the world forever. On July 26, 1945, the Potsdam Declaration occurred. This was an ultimatum issued by United States, Great Britain, and China on the Japanese. You better surrender or else something really, really horrible is going to happen. I think if somebody ever says that, like we've all had that, like, well, you might want to really consider this offer because there's something you don't know that's really, really bad that might happen. And I think it goes down to the annals of terrible military decision-making by Japan. And maybe it was not even a decision for them because it was so ingrained in their ideology. But at any rate, on July 26th, we gave them the ultimatum and we delivered Little Boy, the bomb, to Tinian, which is, I think it's an island in the Marinara Islands. But Ohio seems to make it big time and time again, and Admiral Tibbets delivered the bomb on his B-29, especially modified B-29, less than a month later, I think. So anyway, Norma, you've always got something interesting to add on this, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, the delivering the bomb, of course, had to be by ship to the B-29 bases. And I think people are familiar with the USS Indianapolis.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole nother story. Yeah.
Yeah. So just delivering the bomb and, to the island for Nagasaki, I think it was, in the case of the Arizona or the Indianapolis, it resulted in them steaming through what they thought were pretty safe waters, and they were torpedoed by a Japanese submarine. And then, of course, it became a survival against the sharks. And, ultimately, the captain of the ship was tried, found to be at fault, and later on in his life committed suicide over the really unwarranted shame because his crew said, and even the Japanese submarine commander at his court-martial testified that zigzagging or taking whatever evasive maneuvers would not have saved the ship, that the submarine had it dead to rights. So anyway, just a little sidebar discussion.
No, it's a great discussion. And it also lets me talk about one of my favorite movies of all time, Jaws. So anybody remembers the famous scene when they're on the Orca getting drunk with, what's his name, the actor? I'm getting old. I can't remember names anymore.
Yeah.
Robert Shaw.
Yeah.
That's it.
One of the best acting scenes of all time, where they're talking about their various injuries and Hooper, what's his name, Norm, the actor? I can't think today.
You mean the guy that was in The Goodbye Girl? Yeah.
Come on.
Anyway.
Yeah. We know
Yeah. Anyway, says, what's that one? Or no, it was. We're going to get this right. Sorry, guys. This is why. This is a waste of time.
Sheriff character that was
Roy Scheider.
Right.
Scheider. Right.
Roy Scheider.
Right.
And Richard Dreyfuss. All right, so now we're back in business. So Roy Scheider thinks, "What's that one?" He goes, "It's a tattoo. I had that removed. What was it? The U.S. Indianapolis." And Dreyfuss's character Hooper is like, "You were on the Indianapolis," and then of course Robert Shaw goes into this monologue about what happened to the Indianapolis and the shark attacks, etc. And I think there's some interesting film history about that too. I think he tried it once and he was too drunk and couldn't get it done, and did another. He came in the next day and was embarrassed by it and did it again. And it's brilliant acting. Anyway, with that, you're right. So there's lots going on there, and I think it's sort of an interesting point you bring up, Norm, because I don't know much about that court martial, but I sense it was somewhat political and theatrical. They needed somebody to blame, so they did. I'm guessing, but it sort of rings like that. At any rate,
if you read the history of that entire incident, the air sea rescue and the delay in searching for the Indianapolis they demonstrated some incompetence at the top of the Pacific Fleet, where they weren't tracking the status of their ships very well, and they went on for days and days after the sinking. And nobody was looking for it because it somehow fell through the cracks.
Yeah, so it sounds like the military screwed up, blame the captain, and off we go.
Yeah.
A little bit like our borders are, right? Wait a minute, maybe not.
Yep.
She's getting credit for doing a great job. You see that segue, guys? See what I did right there?
I saw that. Well, hey, as a little side note, too, you realize we're going to be celebrating 50 years of Jaws next year. 1975, it was released.
Isn't that incredible?
50 years, yeah. And
look what's happened to Hollywood.
From this now we have like 3 weeks of Jaws on National Geographic. I mean, you think
Shark Week.
Shark Week is now Shark Month, or something like that. Yeah, right. But 75. Yeah, wow.
Well, do some math on this, because when I was in the 80s, as I was sort of the 70s and 80s when I grew up, I used to watch old movies, and a movie that was 50 years old was a silent movie.
Mm-hmm.
The classics were only like 25 years old, 20 years old, maybe.
Yeah.
I was watching the old Bogart movies and some of the old 40s movies, even older, I guess. But it's remarkable what's happened. You don't look at, and the same with music. Time just doesn't wait on anybody. You'd say, "Holy crap, that's 50 years old," but yes, it is, and it's still relevant today. It's still a great movie. Yeah.
You can put a timestamp on music when you start to see those artists in real time on a stage going, "Ooh, yeah, they're old."
Yeah, they're old, right?
Yeah, they're old. Yep.
So, Norm, it's not like there's a whole lot to talk about. I mean, Ohio's own J.D. Vance becomes vice president. Joe Biden resigns. Well, wait a minute. It says he's not running. And we've got Kamala Harris as the new Democratic candidate. What do we do with that?
I was near some reaction on Sunday when he pulled out of the race. And there was just a lot of Democrats just tearful that he was pulling out.
The crocodile tearful.
You guys got to be kidding me. This is
they skewered that man the week before.
Yeah, this is a good thing. Why are you? It's a good thing.
It's all bullshit.
Yeah, I know.
Bullshit. They.
I was amazed.
Yeah. I mean, how great of man he was. His legacy of driving up inflation to astronomical numbers, of letting I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people across the border. Irrespective of all that, what bugs me the most about this is the cover up of his mental condition and how long this happened. I mean, this to me is the crime of the highest order against the American people.
Yeah. Right. So it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. The same Democrats who are doing their crocodile tears that, oh, what a tremendous guy Joe Biden was and all that. It's all crocodile tears because, as you said, Steve, they've been covering this up, and they deceive the primary voters in the Democratic primary, 14 million people voted for Joe Biden. Exactly 0 people voted for Kamala Harris. And yet the nominee from the smoke-filled room is going to be Kamala instead of Joe Biden. And the honest thing, like you said, the honest thing would have been to declare Joe incompetent, have all of this happen a year or 6 months or 3 months ago, and then the voters in the Democratic primaries could have voted for Harris or some other candidate. Yeah. Instead, they were presented with one candidate, Joe Biden, and now the people you talk about defeating democracy and a threat to democracy. These people went through an election for their Democratic nominee, and they were tricked.
Yeah, this is an ordainment. Is that the right word? Kamala Harris was ordained. She was not elected.
Yeah, right.
And what's interesting to me, I think we should all go back to our predictions. Remember our predictions about what would happen? And I think we were all wrong. I predicted that Biden would not be the candidate, but it would not be Kamala Harris. And it was because at that time, she was sort of the black sheep. They were skewering her. I mean, they were sort of relegated her to a meaningless role, they being the powers that be in the White House or the party, almost like she was the embarrassment. And now they've sort of anointed her as the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it's just sort of gross to watch. And all that said, I think we got a real problem because I think she can win this election. I think she may well win the election.
It's a possibility. Yeah, it'll be interesting if a debate happens between she and Trump, which I'm assuming will be, I guess. But she's got a lot of holes. She was put in place to work the wall, which she didn't do. So he's got a lot of ammunition, and she has a lot to state why she didn't. Let's put it that way. Defend. And let's give her time, and let's find out why she didn't. I think that's valid. But yeah, she's got a lot of, as every candidate does, a lot of holes. A lot of holes. She's going to have to shore up. Yep.
Yeah. Well, so let's go down the list. I think it's important. So on CNN, a Democratic pollster threw a lot of cold water on the latest love fest for Kamala. He said that she might be equal to Trump, maybe even 1% higher in the popular vote, but that she polls worse in the Electoral College outcome against Trump. And now this is at the current time. And as you say, it's a long time to election day. Trump could step on it. Kamala could go up in the polls or down, depending on what happens in the debate, should it happen. But I think it's important to kind of look at her record, to talk about what statements she has made about what her positions are. So she's for the Green New Deal, which, as we know, has led to the pieces that have been implemented, like no pipelines, for example, things like that have led to inflation. She is for a single-payer healthcare system, which, if you think the post office does a bang-up job for you, imagine the federal government running your healthcare. She wants to transition away from fossil fuels. She believes in universal government employment. In other words, every single American gets a job courtesy of the government, which sounds a little bit like the Third Reich or Stalin to me. She's for universal access to healthy foods, whatever that means. But obviously that portends perhaps that we need a bigger food stamp program. She wants to upgrade every building in America, including every home, to energy efficiency, which is more utopian. Who's going to pay for that? She wants universal basic income, so everybody will be guaranteed a certain base level of income. And I guess we'll have 90% progressive tax rates to pay for that. She wants the end of the cattle industry because, cattle farts are thinning the ozone layer. She wants free college for everybody, free college. You don't pay no debt because it's free. You don't have to pay anything for college. She wants to end the Electoral College. He wants cars, internal combustion cars, to be eliminated by 2030.
Well, hold on, Norm. Stop there.
The entire power grid.
So the Electoral College.
That's all.
Focus on that for a second. So look, here's the problem. The big picture problem with all this is it all sort of sounds like pie in the sky goodness to people who don't want to peel back the layers of the onion on all these individual things. But you know, if you talk to Kamala, if you talk to Barack Obama, you know, they say things like, we want to get rid of the Electoral College. And Obama has even talked about disbanding the Senate because it overly represents the less populated states. You know, this is like, if that's not anti-democracy, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Right.
Or actually, you know what it is? That they're leaning towards pure democracy. Maybe we should talk about for what this is. They're leaning towards pure democracy, which is popular vote. I mean, it's not like that didn't result in things like slavery, because most people wanted it. And we don't have a system like that. We have a republic, but they're talking about disbanding our country as we know it and fundamentally changing our country. And when you listen to Biden's political speeches when he was running and Obama's, we're going to fundamentally change the country. They tell you out loud what they want to do. Disbanding the Electoral College essentially ensures the popular vote wins the election. And it just so happens that, as you started with this conversation, that she wins the popular vote. And, you know, everybody, it sounds great. Hey, why wouldn't we want that? Well, because we don't want New York and California picking our presidents. There's a lot in between those two places. So I don't know. It is the problem I have with all this is that it's scary because some of this sounds good to people who don't really dig into it. The other concern I have is, you guys remember, I was just reading some articles on, I like boxing, and if anybody who watched Muhammad Ali back in his heyday, he had problems with certain fighters, and one of them was a guy named Kenny Norton, who just had a style that Ali didn't match up real well against for Ali. Same with, I think, Frazier. You know, you saw George Foreman just sort of flatten Frazier, and then you saw Ali have trouble. I think Kamala Harris is Kenny Norton to Donald Trump a little bit. You know, Trump has a tendency to get overextended, send out criticisms, send out, you know, he's got to be very cautious. He's standing in the middle of a minefield here. And I think when you're in the middle of a minefield and you don't know how to get out, the best move is not to move. And if Trump can remain stationary here, I think he's got a better shot. But there's not much time. You know, he's getting, to use the boxing analogy, he's getting dropped into the fight and at the 11th round, you know, and there's only one to go. So Kamala doesn't have much time to expose herself on any of this. So I'll shut up, Norm, or Brett, go ahead.
No, I think that's an interesting perspective. Sorry, Norm. I mean, not that I really have a ton to add to this because a lot hasn't played out yet. There's so many variables here. She's just now been somewhat anointed to take over, but then it's not really final yet either, I guess, when it comes down to it. But I guess it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But, you know, in the next few weeks, quite frankly, because it's still really early. I mean, you know, think about this. In the last 2 weeks, we've had a former president shot, and we've had our current president, pull out of a race. This is huge history that we're living through right now. That every day isn't history for us. I mean, I you know, but there are just certain markers in time. Is like, wow, this will never happen to another generation. It's pretty amazing. And then comes down to, you know, she still hasn't picked a running mate. JD may never have a debate.
Yeah. Remember we talked about how shrewd the Democratic political party is. I mean, and I think I even said this during my prediction. They're too smart to run. They're too smart and shrewd, and they're too good at tacticians to run Kamala Harris. Except they outsmarted even my predictions, because what they did is they're going to run her, but they're going to run her late in the game. They're going to intentionally wait until it's almost too late, and they're just going to drop her in and she's going to be a breath of fresh air after Biden blows it during his debate, and finally his disabilities are exposed. Yeah. And now she's just the best candidate. So let's just vote for her. It's like it's genius, really.
No, it is. You're right. It's certainly, if they planned it this way, it looks like they probably did. It's not a bad strategy.
No, it's great strategy. We need some of those folks on the other side.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've got an interesting 3 months ahead of us.
But just a couple quick comments about majorities. So there is a phrase called tyranny of the majority, and that reflects things like mob rule that lead to things like lynchings, that lead to things like posses, that lead to things like spontaneous, what do you call it when you get on your phone, the flash mob. So our Constitution is balanced by having the House represent the majority vote, right? Because the House is proportional to the size of the state. California has the largest group of congressmen of any state because they have the largest population. New York has a big representation, as does Florida and Texas. And Ohio's way down there, ranked by population, equal to, proportional to the number of congressmen. The Senate, on the other hand, is set up to be a regulator on the majority, and that's intentional. It's to slow things down, make things more deliberate by making every state get 2 senators, and therefore each state has equal weight in the upper house. But in the lower house, it is majority rules. So that's a nice balance, and that's what the founding fathers had in mind in compromising between ruling by majority versus ruling by each of the former colonies, now states, having equal representation in the upper house. And so Electoral College system reflects that. So within each state, the majority rules, whoever the most Californians vote for, Trump or Harris, will carry the day with that Electoral College in California. So there is majority rule state by state, but then the Electoral College votes, in a different way, not by popular vote. And so I would just say people need to slow down and actually think about the rationale behind these compromises. Otherwise, states like Delaware, Connecticut, Rhode Island, they will have a meaningless impact on the presidential election.
Yeah. To put a little bit of history perspective on that, the Electoral College is not a new idea. I mean, it was established in 1787 to do just this. And we didn't have the Californias and the large states at the time. So they were thinking way ahead.
That's a great point, Brett. Really phenomenal. It reflects, and anybody who's read some of the dialogue, even later in their years between Adams and Jefferson, they hated, like they were arch enemies, but later in life, they sent letters back and forth. And it's really sort of fascinating stuff. I'm not going to dig into it, but check it out. But they had equal concerns going different directions. It's like, I think Adams was deathly afraid of sort of the elites running the country. And that's why we created this sort of check on the power balance. And it's what the Electoral College does. And I always find it interesting who is in favor of dismantling these types of protections. And if the person, party, entity, whoever would benefit from dismantling these things, then I think you have to, it self ratifies and justifies why they are in place. So if the party, in this situation, the Democratic Party, wants to have a popular vote, get rid of the Electoral College, and you would say, well, it's because they're going to win the election. Well, then you immediately understand why they want to do that. And that is exactly why we shouldn't do it, because it gives them power. Right. So, it's like, Brett, this is why we have it.
Brett. Yeah, Brett said it was created in 1787 That's the exact year the Constitution was ratified.
Yeah, right. It's
original.
Yeah, if you're going to change this takes an amendment. It's in the Constitution, so it's not one of those things you can just ban around. And I'm learning from this. I mean, because I looked at it too. It's like, yeah, how can somebody win the popular vote but not the electoral college vote? And I've talked about this with my wife as well too, and it doesn't seem fair. But when you put it in the perspective of the founding fathers, what they're thinking about, what they were trying to protect, there's some logic to this, and you have to let that absorb.
It's sure as hell fair if you're Rhode Island, Connecticut, or Delaware, right?
Yeah, right.
Because the monster state back in 1787 was Virginia.
Sure.
That was the California back then.
Yeah.
And Ohio was part of Ohio's territory, if you will. Pennsylvania, West Virginia. This entire area was subsumed by Virginia at the time. Not a state yet, but it was, if you will, territory of the sovereign state of Virginia. So,
look, guys,
carved up in separate states.
Yeah.
In my world, I deal with this issue in a very parallel and almost identical way, where I often hear people say things like, well, these criminals, they have way too many rights. And there's this old axiom in criminal defense: we'd rather let one guilty man go free than, you'd much rather have a guilty man go free than convict an innocent man. And the way you do that is you create checks and balances and safeguards, and you create fairness in the system that sometimes leads to these results, like an innocent or a guilty man goes free. But if, as a result of him exercising his rights due to government overreach and getting away, it protects all the innocent people more so of getting wrongly convicted. You can't have a perfect system. We can't have a system where everybody is in accord, because that's not humanity at all. And it's certainly not our country. And our country was founded on diversity, not the diversity of the type we see politically thrown around today, but diversity of ideas, where people can come together and say, Virginia back in the day, and people can come together in Vermont, New Hampshire, or these smaller states that are more rural. You have, or in modern days, so we have Iowa versus New York, or Ohio versus LA or California. We have diverse ideas, and we can go live in different parts of the country and still have a federal government. If they do what they are intending to do, you are cramming down from above a fascist, and I'll use that term literally, a fascist ideal of what the government thinks everything ought to be economically, culturally, and the like. And this is the danger of Kamala Harris's laundry list that you went through, Norm, is that it basically creates a top-down, forced cultural, economic, and really international policy.
He's left of Bernie Sanders. A lot of these ideas are communism.
What is communism? Rebranded.
Yeah, you have a guaranteed income that everybody else pays. You have a guaranteed job. So they're going to find a place on some kind of collective labor, farm, and they're going to take people out of the inner city and send them to Iowa and Nebraska to work on state farms, like the Gulag Archipelago or something. I mean, this is right out of Hitler and Stalin, the idea that everybody has a job, everybody gets paid, regardless of how hard you work, regardless of your work ethic. Everybody gets something from a socialist, communist point of view.
Or are we looking at this? Do they even have to work for it, though?
Well, that's right.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not trying to read her mind. I don't know where this is going. I hope. Oh no, I don't hope any of this comes true. But I hope they are working for their money, not just sitting around getting it. That sort of thing. But yeah, it's like one of those. Hey, you're a green card person. You're supposed to be working. Hop on the bus. We're taking your next job. Right. Yeah, it could turn into a dystopian world. It's the worst case scenario. Yeah,
and it will, right? And this idea of the UBI, the universal basic income, has been tried. It doesn't work. It is complete nonsense. It is theater to get votes, or they really believe they can. If this is like Jordan Peterson always says, if you think you're the one that can marshal in communism because you've got it, you understand it better than everybody who's ever tried before. It's like, what kind of person thinks that? Like, what kind of person thinks they can be the one to do it right this time? And I always say, it's not like it didn't kill 300 million people last century, except it did. It's like it results in all sorts of things. Like, because Brett, to your point, so you're not working and you should be working. Wait a minute. You say you're sick, but you're not really sick.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I mean, look, I still get my money. I still have my job. So people just start going through the motions. Other people get pissed off. And, eventually, if the cause isn't the individual humanity or the individual, it becomes this greater utopian existence that one day will come. Well, then it gets really easy just to kill people and say, well, you're out.
Yeah.
You're not like-minded.
Yeah, it could potentially even make the union. I don't really have anything against unions. I understand the concept and why they exist. There are good ones and bad ones, but it could actually increase the power of unions as well, if you think about it, because the unions will enforce it. Will give them the power.
Well, that's right.
And
if you go read the history of Marxism as it developed in Italy, that's exactly where they started to attack, or they started to infiltrate. And we won't go into all that, but it's great history, and there's some good books on it.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, the idea of, as you talked about in criminal defense, the idea of frontier justice is when the majority mob says, hey, Clem, go get a rope. There's an oak tree over there. We all know that, Terry murdered Bill, and we don't need no damn trial. The 100% of the townspeople here say that he's guilty. So let's just go hang old Terry. Well, I mean, that's what you'll have with majority rule. And
sure,
it'll be effectively the same thing, except it'll be about all kinds of policies that absolutely strip individuals of their freedom and their rights, because the majority will decide we want it this way. And we're a country, our Constitution is for individual. If you read the Bill of Rights, it's about individual rights. It's not about the rights of the majority.
Yeah.
And Norm, they don't use the word majority anymore. They use the word consensus. So we have climate consensus.
Okay.
And this is not by mistake. This is not by mistake. And anybody who's ever studied the scientific method knows how ass backward that is. Because the scientific method is you take the consensus and test the crap out of it until you force it to fail. You test it until failure. Then you go back and reevaluate the hypotheses and start over. Just because I say it is and 500 people agree with me doesn't make it so. And in fact, there's examples of this time and time again throughout history, not the least of which is the flat earth. So consensus and majorities aren't always right, except in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? When they would take the audience poll, they were usually right.
There you go.
So let me take this majority idea and turn it into news here in Ohio. So on our ballot this November, have the voters just in the previous election approved a commission for redistricting. 70% of Ohioans voted in favor of a new commission that would be made up of equal parts Republicans and Democrats. So no longer would it be whatever ruling party happens to be in office would have the majority of the people on the commission. The new voter-approved commission is equal R and D, and they are elected officials. On our ballot in November, right after the voters just approved that, now because, again, majority rules, 51%, you get a new amendment to Ohio's Constitution or some kind of referendum. On the ballot this November will be getting rid of that commission, the one that was just approved by the voters. The voters will have a chance to get rid of that, and in its place, have a commission made up of 100% citizens, none of which can be office holders, none of which can be lobbyists, and none of which can be government workers. So with those provisos, I don't know how they'll be selected, but it apparently a system will be set up. and it'll be strictly private citizens. So there's another way that the mob can rule if the voters approve that. 51% of the mob votes for it, it's in. And then you've got unelected people, so they're not representing Cincinnati or Dayton or Yellow Springs, Ohio, or Lima or wherever. It's just going to be citizens who decide what the congressional and the state district boundaries are going to be. And this is being led by the former Supreme Court Justice, Maureen O'Connor, who's the one that kept turning down every proposal that Frank LaRose and the Ohio Ballot Board was sending to the Ohio Supreme Court. He turned down 3 or 4 plans in a row. So he definitely has some sort of this is her pet project. Apparently.
Well, look, I always ask these questions when I evaluate a witness, when I evaluate something as far as in a trial. Like, what's really to be gained? Why, if this witness is lying, what's to be gained? And usually you can backfill or back into whether the person is actually lying or not. And, I'm not calling anybody a liar here, but you can usually expose motives this way. It's like, think it out. If this happens, then what occurs next, and what lever of power is created for somebody, and who is that somebody? What is that? What entity is that somebody? And then you can really start to expose motives of people. And once you have the motives exposed, you have a whole different viewpoint on what they're trying to do. And, there's a Supreme Court case. I don't remember it exactly. It goes way back. The old trope is the cross-examination is the greatest legal engine ever discovered or the greatest legal engine for the discovery of the truth, ever created for the discovery of the truth. And the point is, like, in cross-examination exposes motives. It exposes people's true intent. And we need to cross-examine. We need to force a discussion about why people are wanting to do this, and disbanding the Electoral College, disbanding the Senate. What's the motive? Well, it would just so happen to give the people who want to do those things a whole crap load of power. And it would basically relegate anybody who disagrees to the gulags. And I say that metaphorically and with some degree of, I understand it's a hyperbole, but it is if you don't agree with the mob and the mob has plenary power, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to drag you in front of Roy Bean and you're convicted and you're done.
Yeah. Another ballot, another election thing is really hot in Ohio. So you guys probably saw where a federal judge, I believe in Cleveland, has blocked Ohio's ballot law. The new ballot law, which the part that was struck down, at least put into temporary hold, is the part that allows brothers, sisters, parents, and grandparents of a person who is unable to send in or to go to a booth and vote to handle their mail-in ballot. And it was struck down by the judge because he felt, or she felt, that there were not enough other people named, like grandchildren or nursing home employees or social workers, added to that list. Instead, it's parents, grandparents, brothers and sisters, and sons and daughters, but not grandchildren. And so struck it down. Now, what's interesting is the National Council of Legislators put out a response to this decision, and there are 31 states in the United States that do not allow anybody, including brothers, sisters, parents, sons, daughters, grandparents, etc. They don't allow anybody to handle the ballot. The mail-in ballot can only be turned in by the voter, him or herself. Yet Ohio has more people that can help, and that got struck down, whereas the other states like Arkansas, Alabama, where nobody can help you, those are still standing. So this is, I guess, the beauty, Steve would say, of our federal court system. that we have different district courts and different appellate circles that disagree with each other. So it has to be sorted out.
Yeah. So from a legal standpoint, what happens is this: there are different ways a case can matriculate up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and one is you just have a really significant issue the Supreme Court wants to take on, and another, sometimes that is defined by the fact that we have a split of authority within the federal districts, and the highest court has to decide it. And this will eventually make its way up, and the U.S. Supreme Court will determine this. That what's unique about this, though, and I'm no election lawyer, but the states are the ones that have the power to determine how they handle the electoral process. It's left to the individual states. So the question becomes, do we want the federal government dictating that? And I would say typically, or as a practical matter, no freaking way. If we don't want a congressional act on how all states should conduct their elections, I think that should be a local state decision. On the other hand, the U.S. Supreme Court may be deciding some more significant issues related to individual rights surrounded or pertaining to voting. So it's going to be an interesting legal chronology as these cases get decided. And again, you would say, like, what's really going on? Why are we trying to do this? Why would anybody care about delivering votes? And when you start speculating or hypothesizing about the answers to those questions, I think you're going to expose some motives.
Yeah. Because at a nursing home, you could have a crooked social worker, a crooked, candy striper, going around and having little Helen and little Henrietta and little Ellen or whoever they're, you got 100 little old ladies and a couple of men, because the men have all died. So you got a couple 100 little old ladies in a nursing home, and, you have somebody who is basically ballot harvesting, going in there and just voting who they want, and in the name of helping somebody else. And that's why Ohio passed that law, was to make sure only relatives of the person could handle that ballot, not outside people.
Yep. So it's like the electoral. I had a friend of mine who was an electrician one time. He goes, the electoral code, it's written in blood. And what he meant is, like, every single thing in there that seems ridiculous, or like these little, tiny little regulations about how you have to do something, that resulted from somebody getting hurt at one point or another by doing that thing or not doing that thing. And here, clearly, this is designed to attack ballot harvesting that was disingenuous. So, look, on its face, if I'm in a nursing home and I want my everyday care worker to deliver my vote because I don't have any family left or whatever it is, or my family won't do it for me, or for whatever reason they can't at that time, that sounds like that's a perfectly legitimate request. But at the same time, it is also perfectly illegitimate that the care worker at the nursing home is going around to people who are essentially, call them less than competent, or they don't care who they vote for anymore. And they're just saying, here, vote, check this. I'm going to take care of this for you. You should vote. Or not even tell them and just do it. It's like, you can see both sides of that equation. And now, can it be fixed with a law? I don't know. But you can at least understand the motive behind it on both sides.
Yeah, and I can see the extreme of the states. They don't even allow family members to do it. Family members do the same thing. I mean, come on, not all families agree on politics. So if they have an opportunity to fill in grandpa's ballot, and we don't see eye to eye. You see red, I see blue. I'm going to fill in blue because grandpa can't see or whatever. Again, but nothing's perfect, like you said before, Steve. There's no system that's perfect. So
there is no system.
You would think that family would be the best way to handle this. I mean, it seems like a compromise. If you have to have,
I agree. Well, at least there's, it's like, for all the reasons you're talking. I don't need to say more about it.
Yeah.
There was a pretty cool decision regarding the ATF from a federal district judge in Texas. He knocked down the ATF ban on these what they're called forced reset triggers. These devices that you can put on a semi-automatic gun, that allow the trigger to recock itself very quickly. And the ATF declared those trigger devices to be machine guns under the National Firearms Act in 1938. And a federal court just struck that down, not under Second Amendment
correct
reasons,
yeah.
but struck it down because it was an unconstitutional taking of congressional power by the administration, by the executive branch.
Yeah.
That, it was legislation that defined what a machine gun was, and that the ATF had exceeded that definition and decided on its own, like they did with bump stocks, that,
yep.
Hey, this is a machine gun when it's not a machine gun.
Yeah, this is what I think saves the country ultimately, guys. I mean, this is where it's not a Second Amendment issue, even though it's people think it is. And just like with bump stocks, what happens is the ATF interprets its own rules and the legislative branch says you can't have machine guns, and they define what a machine gun is. ATF then writes a bunch of rules interpreting what that means. So they reinterpret bump stocks to mean machine guns. And the U.S. Supreme Court, I can't remember the name of the case as I'm sitting here in mid-Ohio in my camper, but the Supreme Court basically says that's a bridge too far. You can't cram this definition into the statutory scheme. And this is sort of part and parcel with the Chevron issue that everybody's been talking about. These administrative agencies have grown to such leviathanific, my word, I made it up, power, based on the Hobbes Leviathan, but leviathanific power that they can just do whatever the hell they want. And ATF is doing this. And so what happens is one regime comes in, one party comes in who's anti-gun. So they're going to start saying, all right, ATF, you sit under the executive branch. I want you to find ways to get rid of these devices. So they have somebody smart in their system that says, all right, we'll just interpret this rule or create a rule that calls this a machine gun under the Federal Firearms Act, and therefore we'll get rid of them. And really, there is a way to get rid of them. You just have Congress pass a law, and then the law can be tested against the Second Amendment. But what they've done is they've rewritten a rule to say this is what it is, and this fits within the congressional law. And the courts are now in the wake of Chevron and these other decisions saying, look, irrespective of the Second Amendment, you don't have the power to do this. And we're not saying you can't do it. We're not saying Congress can't do it or the legislative branch can't do it, but you cannot. And go back to the drawing board. And if Congress, back to our original conversation here, which is sort of the theme of the day, people can vote on this. There are representatives in our government that can voice their concerns. They can call witnesses to testify on the congressional floor, and everybody gets to hear why you're doing this. This is the beauty of the congressional process that we have abandoned over the years by giving deference under Chevron to administrative executive branches of government that can just basically do with a pen what they can't do on the floor of Congress. And the courts now, based on these new and frankly not novel ideas, are saying you can't do it. Sorry. And we'll get to the Second Amendment issues when we need to, but not yet. You can't do it for other reasons.
Good.
Yeah.
Couple quick Supreme Court things here in Ohio. So the Supreme Court in Ohio is taking up a criminal case against a man who poured, and I know we're all pet lovers here, we're animal lovers. This guy, apparently a feral cat, kept coming in his yard, and he poured bleach on this cat, which I'm sure killed it or caused it great pain and suffering. And basically, if you do that to a pet, it's a felony in Ohio. And what is left unresolved, apparently, is whether or not you can do something horrible like torture a feral animal. And I don't know all the laws about that, but apparently that issue has risen to the Ohio Supreme Court, and they're going to address cruelty to feral animals by, citizens. Can you do things like pour bleach on a cat, for God's sakes, which I can't imagine anybody, whatever.
I haven't read the briefs on this case, but I suspect it's one of those cases that sounds like offensively horrible because factually it is. Who wants to pour bleach on a feral cat and kill it that way? but it probably has some constitutional overtones. Like, how is the law defined as what is abuse?
Yeah.
And what is an animal and what is a pet? And, I'm guessing, guys, and I'll do a breakdown on it maybe next week, but I'm guessing it has something to do with the definitional structure in the statute, not saying that you have a right to go abuse and torture animals. And then, you could even take that further. It's like, if I kill an animal with an arrow, is that less abusive? It's a feral animal. Is that less abusive than doing it with a gun, or vice versa? And then how do you carve out those exceptions? So this is probably something sort of like the gun issue. It's got that sort of shiny lure of interest, but it's probably sort of a, not boring to me, but probably a boring underlying issue about the constitutionality of the statute. Is it vague? Is it overbroad? Is the definitional structure there? And ultimately, the resolution for things like this is exactly what we just talked about. You got to send it back to the legislative floor, send it to the General Assembly, and say, write a law, damn it, and make it fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it even
and
has.
Then we'll test that one.
Yeah, it even has a little bit of property rights intonation to it. If let's say the feral cat was doing damage to his property,
you bet, right?
Otherwise, no. I mean, otherwise we'd be killing animals like crazy on our property, whatever. If it was causing damage, monetary damage, okay. But no, you're right. It has that
picking off a coyote in your backyard any worse,
right,
or better? Right. Is killing groundhogs that are burrowing under the foundation of your outbuilding, as people live in the country tend to do.
Obviously,
is that worse?
Obviously he was totally pissed off at this cat, bleached it. I mean, because you could trap it and set it go and take it 50 miles away, and it will never come back.
Yeah, is this a hate crime against a feral cat? Right. So they have to define the law.
Right.
Define the law. But.
Yeah, because you could easily, you trap things all the time to get them off your property, and you take it 25 miles away, and that's a humane way to do it, and you do it, that sort of thing. But obviously not happy with this cat. Yeah, exactly.
Or Brett, what we do out in the country is we kill it and eat it.
Well, if you want a feral cat on the Barbie, that's a different thing. Exactly. I don't know what the taste of that would be, but.
Well, look, guys, with that one, we got to wrap it up. Norby, you got one more?
Yeah, just real quickly, these are interesting FOP decisions on endorsement. So this is the state of Ohio's FOP, not our friend Brian Steele and his local lodge, but the entire state FOP has a system for endorsing candidates. For the first time, they are not endorsing Sherrod Brown, but they're not endorsing Bernie Moreno for Senate either. But they're ticked at Sherrod because in the wake of that Columbus incident where the police officer shot the knife-wielding young black girl who was attacking the other black girl with this deadly knife, waving it, as if she was going to stab her, and he shot and killed her. That was the same day of the George Floyd verdict against the police officer. And on that same very sensitive day, Sherrod Brown texted or posted on Twitter something to the effect that girl should still be alive today, implying that the police officer did something wrong by saving the life of the other black girl.
Mm-hmm.
So the FOP was pretty ticked off about that. The other thing, they are not endorsing Steve Dieters, who is a former prosecutor and is running for another seat on the Ohio Supreme Court because of his prosecution of that University of Cincinnati policeman who stopped a motorist, and then when the motorist started to drive away, claimed that he was being dragged or something, and he shot and killed that motorist. And ultimately, all the charges were dropped. But Steve, Mr. Dieters, went after that guy, I think twice. Indicted him twice, went after him twice, and it didn't hold up in court. But the FOP was ticked about that as well. So no endorsement for him.
What date was that the policeman shot the young lady with the knife? Did your research show that? What date that was?
The same day the George Floyd verdict came down.
Okay, gotcha. Because I know.
So what was that like 3 years ago?
Yeah,
or something?
Yeah. I got to look at this old Lawyer Talk episode up because that day you guys broke that video down on the podcast.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
God,
That might be worthy of
it was a really good,
reposting.
it was a really good breakdown of it, honestly, because it was almost real time
Yeah.
to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll look that
Yeah,
up.
we ought to do that. But
Yeah.
well,
Anyway.
look, guys, I got to get back to my other life here. As much as I make podcasting and Common Sense Ohio important, I've got other things I got to do. And I'm sure Norm's down racing and I'm up watching motorcycles. Brett, you've got your own business. But a couple of closing comments. Common Sense Ohio, we do this for the people. I don't mean to be over melodramatic, but we do it because we like it. We do it because we want to have common sense discussions. We don't always say everything correctly. The three of us do our best to just give you our honest take on things. And Norm throws out the stories, and I honestly don't know what those stories are going to be. So I haven't researched it, and we're just giving our real time thoughts on it because we want to generate discussion, and discussion based on common sense can lead to the truth. But the point is, we don't get paid to do this. We do this, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. If you want to be a sponsor, if you want to partake in keeping the show going on, go to commonsenseohioshow.com, send us a note, and we can talk about some sponsorship opportunities that we're exploring. Also, if you like the legal breakdown stuff, I'm going to tout my own podcast, Lawyer Talk. Check that out, lawyertalkpodcast.com. So lots to talk about in the news in the coming months. If you've got a topic you want us to cover, as our friend did last week, we are happy to do that. commonsenseohioshow.com. Check out the notes, check out the old shows, check out the blogs, check out everything there is to check out there, and continue to like, share, and support Common Sense Ohio, where we are coming at you right from the middle each and every week.